As someone that's played World of Warcraft for a long time, I had to see what this next expansion will be all about. Is it hopium to think after 2 back-to-back bad expansions they will somehow create something of at least the same quality as Legion? Legion and WoD both had issues, but come on, at this point the game was significantly better at that time. The expansion release had some good and bad stuff. Let's start with the good. I think one of the best changes that could have been made was the return of more customizable talent trees. For a long time in retail, they have just felt really stale and lacking in choice. Since Legion, I've made a Demon Hunter, and the lack of different talent choices each expansion means nothing ever really changes. Almost every expansion you get locked into either I-Beam or Blade builds, occasionally a one-off talent like Fell Barrage or back in the day Bloodlet, but really it's just felt super stagnant. I'd assume other classes feel similar, so I hope with this return of something akin to the old talent system will bring a more refreshing change to play for these specs that haven't changed much over the years. The only downside I have with the system as of now is that the talent tree is spec locked, so we won't be able to experiment as much in other parts of the tree. It makes sense why Blizzard wouldn't want to let in more variants for them to balance. They aren't exactly good at doing that historically. I don't have much interest in professions, but generally I like most of what I've seen with what they want to do. I think crafting orders is a good way to get what you need, and a better alternative to waiting to get something on the auction house. I guess the only thing I have some slight worry about with crafting is if the quality bleeds into other content. Titan Forging felt really bad since you had to run different difficulties of the same content for an RNG piece of gear to be slightly better. If it remains exclusive to professions, I'm fine with that though. I don't think profession tools being cosmetic really means much. Getting it out of your inventory is a nice change though. A lot of people enjoy being crafter and gatherers and playing the auction house, so this probably will go over really well with a lot of people. It's not for me, but I'm aware it used to be part of WoW's identity in the past, and a lot of people miss professions being part of their character's identity. I think the changes to PvP gear is really good. Eye level being the barrier to progressing ranks feels absolutely horrible. When you first get to a new rank or are trying to break into a new one, you don't have to just play better than the other people, but completely outclass them. For casual players, it's a barrier to entry, especially later into the season when people are pretty much locked into the rank they're at and can act as gatekeepers. I think that people that like eye level in PvP aren't good enough to get highly rated and use it to cover for their hurt ego at not being good enough. The thing I'm most excited and skeptical for is the reuse of old dungeons in the Mythic Plus pool. I really like some of the older dungeons, but at the same time I also have a lot that I dislike. Blizzard should have data from when older dungeons were current content and just not use the ones that people didn't enjoy running. One of the big issues I see coming from something like this is if rotated dungeons hamper players from getting strong trinkets or gear. I think if there's gear that's identified as really strong and it's pushed out when that dungeon is removed from the pool and we won't see it again, that's a really big issue. Mythic Plus in my mind has largely been one of the more successful newer systems in WoW. Now time to do some complaining. I know some people care about cosmetics and mounts, but come on, the customizable dragon thing is lame as hell. I'm not 7 anymore playing a flash game to dress up some character. It's super cringe seeing people bat chest over something that will have next to no impact in the game. I guess it's supposed to make the player feel like they have some level of control in the world, but mounts have never given me any sort of joy. The only time I ever farm for one is when I have nothing to do in the game and I'm about to quit playing. Drakthir Invoker, the upcoming new hero class and race. Oh boy, where do I even start with how unbelievably underwhelming this looks? Not necessarily their spindly look itself that makes them uninteresting to me. I think the real issue is setting them apart for Draconids. I think this really hurts the race's connection to the world. When you look at hero classes, like the last hero class Demon Hunter, a rich lore had been established with them pre-Legion and had a well-known representative in Illidan. And you have even more of that with the hero class Death Knight. You know, you have Arthas, you have Terran Gorefiend. I mean, there's so much lore with both of these characters and it's just completely tied in with that class. And when you have this new one come along and it has really nothing, I mean, I don't know, that kind of just doesn't feel good. Even if they didn't want to go a route more connected to the Draconids, I'd have liked to see something more unique with a better connection. It's still too early to fully know, but with what we currently have, I don't see myself creating one, let alone playing it in endgame. When I think of WoW in its glory days, one of the things I feel like was so important was the story, the main questline if you will. Of course, a game needs to feel good to play, but an MMO needs more than that. As WoW has declined and tried to maintain the failing player base, the story has declined with them. The whole revival of the Horde vs Alliance narrative in BFA, the crutch of Titans whenever they have no idea what else to use, and whatever the Jailer line story was meant to be. All that with destroying what important characters had represented in the past. The biggest thing I see being the knife in the side of an already declining player base is another expansion with a muddy narrative. When I look at Legion, there was definitely issues with things like the exponentially increasing weapon artifact power and legendaries being RNG drops. The story the expansion told felt good and connected every class of the story with the Order Hall stuff. So from what the developers have talked about, this expansion story is about exploring the past of the dragons and for them to reclaim their legacy as the protectors of Azeroth. I mean, there isn't a lot left unsaid in regards to the dragons lore. Since the Dragonflights left the Dragon Isles during the Great Sundering, lore can only be from before the War of the Ancients. We already know about the Winterscorn War and Galakron, so I guess they slide new story parts in. I mean, this won't be the worst thing when just questing in a new zone, learning about how the aspects structure their flights, and I guess some like interfaction politics. The big issue for me in regards to that is, who will our opposition be? Who will the big bad pulling the strings happen to be? I know they've shown the Primalist groups, but who exactly is going to be the representative? I feel like reviving Galakron would be a really weak plotline and not really fit in as a leader for them. He never really led a faction. The not living Protodrakes mostly just were used to bring in more dragon essence for him to consume. Shadowlands had a lot of themes with undead. Running it back as part of the main storyline is not appealing to me again. Something they could do if they want a Galakron-esque baddie is bringing back Protodrakes that we thought from the lore were killed during that time period of Galakron. Dragons like Koros or Talonixa, who we know of playing a role back then but thought dead. Koros emulated Galakron and began to cannibalize other Protodrag. Talonixa was the Protodragon that led the opposition against Galakron and was bitten in the final confrontation, supposedly dying. Since we know that proto-dragons bitten by the not living started to perform cannibalism as well, maybe by Galakron dying shortly after chomping down on Talonixa, this didn't fully turn her. The only issue with something like this is both of these proto-dragons don't have much ties to any of the living aspects as of now. Malygos and Deathwing were the aspects most active in the past with connections to both, and obviously they're gone. Talonixa was also confrontational in what limited knowledge we have of her, so her going into hiding seems like a drastic character change, but I guess if you get your spine chomped down on, maybe that changes your character. Another route they could possibly take is with the infinite Dragonflight, but I seriously doubt they would want to take this path. A lot of time-related stuff in Cataclysm and WoD have been severely criticized and just failed to go over well. They've left open Nozdormu's transformation into Morozond, but it's tricky since it's related to the old gods, which have supposedly been defeated. Emphasis on supposedly. They could use something like the Demon Chain, which used to be attached to the Demon Soul, as a way to do the transformation. I guess this could work. Again, it just feels weak without the old gods. I think the biggest thing that should be explored in this expansion is, why does the Dragonflights even care about returning to be protectors of Azeroth? The type of narrative where the Dragonflights realized that handing over the responsibilities of protecting Azeroth to the mortal races was the incorrect decision. This would really be fascinating in my opinion. An opposition with some of the characters we've dealt most closely with in the past decade. It happens that Alexstrasza is the last aspect we've never fought in the game, so this type of fight will be bittersweet but memorable with her as the main enemy of the expansion. Also, it's not like she can do anything for her flight beyond a leadership role. All her consorts are dead unless they retcon lore from the novels, so she can't create any more offspring unless she starts hooking up with proto-dragons, I guess. Whatever storyline Blizzard ends up going, the execution needs to be above the recent year's standards, or else the same issues will happen. This isn't even Blizzard's last chance. That was a long time ago. From there on, the game is only worth playing for a month, couple months at most. This won't be changing with this expansion. If you believe otherwise, you're delusional. I've been overly nice for the Dragonflight expansion. From what we know so far, My main criticism going forward is going to continue being the narrative. The thing is, I just don't see dragons going over well. Sure, people love dragons, but I lost that trust long ago. If you've ever played Magic the Gathering, you might remember a time in 2014 and 15 where such a thing existed and didn't do well. That was the Dragons of Tarkir set. A set with the staple of high fantasy and dragons. Failed pretty well. The head designer put out a column talking about how it failed. He said, "We messed up with dragons. A set filled with dragons seemed like a slam dunk. We've done lots of market research and players love dragons. It was a set that would design itself." Now maybe I'm just a cynic, but I think I see a lot of that similar thought process in this expansion. I think a lot of companies have the same outlook and feel like this will be easy for them. In the description I'll have that article so that you can reference it if you want to see what criticisms popped up. Obviously, a video game and a card game are very different. I think there's a lot of good that we can take from both. I think there's a lot of good we can learn from why Dragons of Tarkir did not do well.